Rental and leasing. We've all heard the terms, but when it comes to vehicle fleet management, what exactly are the differences and how can we know which is best for a particular fleet need? Today, I'm here via satellite with Doug Brockman, COO and General Manager of Kline Van Specialty Rentals, to see if we can answer that question. Hi Doug, thanks for joining us.
Hi Sonia, thank you. Always glad to help.
So rental and leasing, aren't these pretty much the same thing?
That's a good question. Automotive leases come in two varieties, a closed-end lease and an open-end lease. There's a big difference between the two types, and you should understand the differences before you sign a lease contract. Federal regulation requires that the type of lease, whether it's an open or a closed contract, be clearly indicated on the lease agreement. Be sure to look for it. The truth is, there's a number of terms out there that add much confusion as to what a particular lease product is, such as walk-away lease, capital lease, finance lease, closed-end lease, open-end lease, variable leases, short-term leases, just a few I can think of.
Wow, I had no idea there were so many different types of leases.
Actually, it can all be condensed down to just two types of leases, a closed-end lease or an open-end lease. All the other names are really just variations or different names for the same things. Kline offers both, and we can help you navigate all the nuances of leasing. First, let's talk about a closed-end lease. At the time you lease, Kline estimates the vehicle's lease-in residual based on the expected number of driven miles and the condition, location of the vehicle. If the vehicle is actually worth less than the residual when you turn it in, Kline takes the financial hit, not you. This is a lease that has everything included into the lease up front. No loose ends to deal with at the close of the lease. Hence, a closed-in lease. A closed-in lease is a product you want to eliminate the risk of a volatile vehicle market or money market rates or any fluctuations within the market itself. With a closed-in lease, additional miles, higher mileage applications, accessories and services that you need, they can be capped right into your lease for one predictable monthly payment. And the right to walk away from the vehicles at the end of the lease. You may hear these called fixed price leases, disposable leases, or as I mentioned, a walk-away lease.
So whose responsibility is it to take care of the vehicles in this situation?
Well, that's a great point, Sonia. In a closed-in lease, Kline retains ownership of the vehicle, and for the most part, we're responsible for maintaining the vehicle, and we do cover catastrophic failures and towing, etc. But we do transfer the preventative maintenance responsibilities and some of the light-duty responsibilities to the customer in our lease agreements.
So if Kline still owns the vehicle at lease end, does that mean you cannot buy the vehicle at the end of the lease?
Generally, these types of leases are designed to cover only the portion of the vehicle's value during the term of use, and an assumption is made as to the vehicle's value at conclusion of the lease. We do that in order to calculate depreciation for the lease term. In these cases, the lessee does not acquire equity in the vehicle, but nor does the lessee suffer any additional depreciation at the term of the lease. There is no risk to the lessee in suffering any loss of value, should the vehicle's value be much less at lease turn-in. This is one of the most desirable advantages of this type of lease. But to answer your question, Sonia, most vehicles can be purchased at the end of the closed-in lease. However, the purchase price is generally at the then current market value of that vehicle.
So isn't that just like renting?
Well, yes, exactly. In fact, you could say a short-term closed lease is in general the same thing as a daily car rental.
But as a fleet, why would you not get some value or equity in the fleet?
As I mentioned, the value in a closed-in lease is the elimination of risk of the ending value of the vehicle being upside down in its value versus the market value. But if a fleet is wanting to accumulate equity and or ownership of the fleet, then they need to consider the second of the two options of leases, the open-end lease. Open-end leases are used primarily for commercial business leasing. In this case, the lessee, not Kline, takes the financial risk, which is not so much of a problem for a business since the cost can be expensed. Annual mileage on a business lease is usually much greater and less predictable than the average 12,000 miles per year of a non-business lease. In open-end leasing, a customer is responsible for paying the difference between the estimated lease-in value, or the residual, and the actual market value at the end of the lease. This amount could be a significant sum of money if the market value of your vehicle has dropped or you've driven a lot more miles than expected. There are many factors to consider with an open-end lease agreement, like resale values, seasonal influences, interest rates, and excessive mileage. The lessee has control of the vehicle in this type of lease and is responsible for upkeep, licensing, and other costs usually associated with ownership. We will work with you to minimize your risk, meet your budget on payment, and maximize the best ending value as possible for your fleet. With open-end lease, you'll get to pay for your vehicle over time, free up valuable capital while enjoying ownership and realizing potential cash flow and tax advantages of leasing, including retaining equity in your vehicle, but where desired, the off-balance sheet treatment of an operating expense.
So, at the end of an open-end lease, I'd own the vehicles.
Yes, that's the assumption. A capital or a finance lease has to have a buyout. It's required. The buyout has to be at a bargain price over the current market value. Final terms would depend on what your particular situation called for. You may opt for an open-end fleet lease, also referred to as a finance lease or a capital lease, maybe even called an operating lease or a track lease. Many companies choose these types of leases for their numerous similarities in ownership and flexibility to add, replace, or terminate vehicles as business conditions dictate. Equity can even be traded in on new fleet if desired.
That's great. A lot of information to absorb, though. I can see why it can be so confusing sometimes to know what type of lease would be needed. If I wanted to know more about a specific need that I have, how do I get started with Kline?
Well, that's the easy part, Sonia. Simply fill out a request for a free quote on our website at klinevan.com. If you have any specific questions, you can include them in the notes section at the bottom of the form. Or if you're not ready for a quote, ask your questions on our Contact Us page, or feel free to call me the old-fashioned way. My number is 816-554-3344. Be happy to talk to you.
Thanks, Doug. It's been great learning more about leases. Anyone out there who has a need for one of the leases discussed today, or to learn more about how Kline can help you with your fleet management, please contact Doug at 816-554-3344, or, as he mentioned, check out our website at klinevan.com to learn more.